This is the Sheridan Publishing Excellence interview series. Publishers sharing what's working today to keep their businesses vibrant and running strong. All right, friends, I've got a great opportunity on behalf of Sheridan to be visiting today with Gretchen Schmidt from South Florida, Edible South Florida to be specific. And Gretchen, the whole goal of getting together is for us to ask you some questions and to share some thoughts as we begin to look hopefully towards getting on the other side of this pandemic and things like that. But love to have you introduce yourself and tell us, the folks, a little bit about your magazine.
Thanks, Ryan. Edible South Florida, we were the first publication within the edible communities in Florida when we launched in 2010. And now we've got lots of companions in Northeast Florida, Sarasota, Orlando, and so on. And we like to think we're real special down here in South Florida because we're not like any of the other edibles. Our seasons are different here. We truly are tropical. And everything about us sort of reflects what Miami, down to the Keys, Greater Fort Lauderdale is. And that's what we try to do. Our magazine is quarterly. We have a website and very active social media.
Oh, that's great. How long have you been publishing then in South Florida, specifically with Edible?
We're in our 11th year right now.
That's outstanding. So you've got a little bit of a track record to be able to reference from as we kind of think about the pandemic, because I'd love to find out, how has the pandemic really affected your business operations, and have the past 16 months, have they revealed any new opportunities for you?
Opportunities and adjustments like everybody else. When the pandemic started, many of our advertisers in Edible South Florida, obviously we cover food and farm, what we grow here. But we have never had a whole lot of support from our restaurant community. We have a great dining scene, but they really don't tend to advertise a lot, very few. And it's always been that way. I think it's a very transient business. Most don't feel they need to advertise. Look, we're a big metropolitan area, and what we do have is a lot of events, and they've been active advertisers. So obviously we lost all the events last year in spring, and that was the biggest adjustment. They're starting to come back right now. They're scheduling, many of these big food events take time to prepare for. But one of our upcoming in fall, they've agreed to, do their plan for that event. So it's a big vegan festival called Seed, Food, and Wine. South Beach Wine and Food Festival, which typically is during our winter high season for tourists. They pushed it off. Typically it's in February, and they pushed it off to May of this year. Scaling it back a lot, it does tend to attract a lot of visitors. Moving from February to the end of May, which is effectively steamy hot summer here, and it's on the beach. But it went very well. They did a good job with it, and people did go to it. It was a little bit different, but they really went out of their way to be very safe and convince people to, they were requiring vaccines and proof of that. I'm not sure in the end how they sort of had to adjust that, but it was a safe, good event. And that's sort of the approach that we're seeing moving forward with events. They are going forward with them, but they are adjusting and changing their approach, I think, to make sure that people understand it's a safe event.
Yeah, it makes sense. I think, obviously, we see in the news, Florida was a little bit different. Without getting into politics, people got back, or businesses were able to somewhat get back to business a little bit sooner than other places in the country. But what we saw in the news, did that translate over on the publishing side? When we saw people getting back to some level of business in Florida, did that translate back into advertising, or did you still kind of lag behind a little bit?
It's hard to say. It really is kind of hard to say. One opportunity that we've seen now is that many businesses, including events, but restaurants and everybody, is that they're taking advantage of pandemic money or grant money that they're getting. and we're, and they're throwing that into advertising and promotion right now, which is great. So that's an opportunity that nobody would have expected. So whatever we lost last year, it feels like we're getting it back, and we're getting it from new folks too. I mean, it feels like there's a lot of money out there to spend, and we're trying very hard to make sure that people know that, hey, think about us.
Right. No, that makes sense. One of the things I noticed working with my advertisers is that a lot of times they need guidance on how to spend the money, where to spend it. And I wonder if a lot of times you've observed the same thing I have. Business owners, some of them can barely run their own business, much less make a good marketing decision. Have you experienced that as well?
Yeah, I think some of our smaller advertisers, there are people who are real savvy about this. And some of these would be nonprofits who do have budgets to advertise in publications like ours, because our readers are very engaged and very active. So even though it may not be a food, we have a lot of advertisers who don't have anything to do with food. They love our readers because our readers act on what they see, and they trust us. So the nonprofits are very savvy about getting grant money and using it well. They seem to need less guidance. We just need to remind them that, hey, we're a good, we're a good vehicle for your message. But some of the other ones, yeah, they're not aware of it. So we hold their hands in the sense of putting together a real good program for them. Sometimes they say, well, I have X amount of dollars here. What can you do for me for that? We get that a lot from smaller folks. And we're like, sure, here you go. Here's your print. Here's your social. Here's your digital. And, here's a nice little package, and we can throw this in too. And that makes it easy for them.
No, that's great. That makes a lot of sense. As a publisher with a print product in the mix, what do you feel like maybe this fall or next year and beyond, what are going to be some of your biggest challenges, do you think?
I don't know. Again, I've already said that we don't have a lot of food advertisers, but food is an integral part. Restaurants and dining is part of obviously what we cover and what we talk about, and there is some advertising, and that does include some events too. I'm not real sure what things are going to look like, especially down here in Florida, where we do have special challenges. And you could say we don't want to get political. It's part of it.
It's hard not to, right? Yeah,
it is. It genuinely is. Right now, we have lots of fights going on, and I don't know how that will play out. What I do know is that we need to be ready. We need to be responsive. We need to explore multiple approaches to how we tackle what we're offering. And one of those areas in publishing that we're finding success with and increasing success is sort of taking a custom publishing approach to some of what we're doing. The straightforward idea of, selling an ad and having value added, whatever that may look like, that's fine for some people, but I think now we need to look at different ways to create products for them. We let them lean on us. We can be an extension of their marketing arm because we know how to do it. Okay. And that's a value that we offer all the time. We come up with all this. People don't have employees right now. They're struggling. They've been busy. They were busy before the pandemic. And honestly, they're busier now trying to play catch up, and they have fewer people to do it with. Okay. So anything that we can do to make their jobs easier is, to me, the way to go. So if it's like, it's not just here's an ad, we'll build your ad for you. No, it's like, why don't we do this over the course of the year? We know you have this event coming up or this need to promote. Okay. And here's a year-long plan where we can do this in print, where we can do this like this. We'll write it. We'll photograph it for you. What do you think about this? Can we help you with some event support? Looking at this whole integrated approach, taking care of the details, and really and truly, taking care of it as if we were an agency or as if we were an event planner, whatever it is that we can offer them. That's what we do. They appreciate it. They're happy with it. And I have to tell you, where we've been doing that, they're very grateful for this opportunity, and they come back. Now they know that we can be trusted to deliver something for them, on time, something that's good. And we like doing that too. It's fun for us.
It makes sense. I love what you're saying. I love the recommendation based selling. I think that salespeople that are creative almost always sell more. I think you would agree. And what
Yep.
I've really noticed is the publishers that I work with, and I'm not saying that everyone has to launch their own agency internally, but I have noticed that the publishers that sort of act a little bit more like an agency almost always make more money than those that just say, hey, do you want to buy an ad? So I think what you're saying is something that all publishers should really think about. And also you can outsource a lot of the
Sure.
digital that might need to get done, and you can freelance a lot. I mean, there has been this sort of gig economy, this freelance economy that has sprouted from people working remote. So now we have access to people got so used to working remote,
Right.
which has been interesting. What do you feel like is, from an editorial point of view, what kind of has either been your biggest challenge through COVID, or you think your biggest challenge will be kind of, coming up next year from an editorial point of view?
Well, this is where my heart is. And so it's the challenges over the past year have been a little over a year ago. I remember that suddenly we tried, even though we're a quarterly publication, we think it's really important to be relevant,
Right.
really important. Like my stories, and we are, since we're small and we're flexible, we're very nimble here. We will, we can turn on a dime to make sure that our content really reflects what's happening around us. So for our summer issue last year, not only were we trying to figure out what restaurants and businesses were doing for the pandemic, they were closed, they're pivoting to delivery only, how farms and, adjusted to delivery models when farmers markets closed. But then we had the Black Lives Matter movement take, front
Mm-hmm.
stage last year. And we're like, we have to address this too. This is important. We don't have the resources to go into depth, nor do we have the space, but we can sure address what we can address at the time. And we did. So this idea of remaining relevant editorially and reflecting your changes, we can push a recipe feature, on something that's, you have your evergreen stuff and that's just fine. But we really try to do it in every single issue over the last year. Something that was really pandemic related has happened. So whether if it was a story for us to talk about, in the beginning of the year, we talked about how we interviewed different businesses and said, like, how did you make it through it? And everybody's story was
Right.
different,
Yeah.
and
No, that makes sense.
that's not going to change either. And right now, we have the terrible irony that these businesses that managed to survive the pandemic, okay, now have had to close down or curtail their businesses because they have no workers right now. Because that's the biggest problem that we're seeing here in the restaurant business and everywhere else. Nobody has workers.
Yeah, food is a social conversation. So I hadn't really thought about it until you mentioned it right now, is being able to embrace and be relevant, not only to your readers, but to what's happening, in your communities. And I never would have thought about it until we're visiting that, talking about some of the social issues, and then the intersection of social issues and food, in the communities. That's a really, really interesting conversation. If you don't mind me asking, was there positive feedback to that, negative feedback in between? What was kind of the feedback you received as you began to sort of introduce some of those social context conversations into a magazine that is predominantly known for for food?
Well, that's a good question, because feedback is hard to come by sometimes. We see our role as Edible South Florida, and every publication has different, under the same big umbrella. We all need to meet the needs of our communities, and that
Sure.
varies wildly here. But we consider ourselves an information source. So the feedback I got, what we were seeking to do here was like, let people know. So more specifically, were these, here is a garden in a poor part of town that can need your help, that this is
Interesting.
what they're doing. This is what they're growing. Every Wednesday, you can go out there and help them. We were just bringing all these things forward. And so the feedback was like, hey, I didn't know about that.
It's great.
And some of this spawned another, corollary is, food justice is part of the story here. But communities in need, there were a whole lot of, there's always been farm and food distribution for those in need. Those programs have always been there, but there have been a whole lot more of those programs over the past 18 months. And they're continuing. So things like community fridges came around all around town here. How can I give? How can I be part of it? And that was something, and we have, devoted a lot more space to that sort of thing, because people were like, I didn't know about that. Or I could use this, or I have a neighbor who's really hurting right now, lost her job, got the family to feed, what can we do? And so by just shining a light on all that and informing people, that's where we see our usefulness right now, because honestly, it doesn't end. I mean, one of our most visited pages on our website is a running page that I've been doing since the beginning of the pandemic that basically says, where are the food distributions for this week? And every week I go into the same old sources and update it and make sure that people know, now the school is starting again. Where do they get the free meals? How does that work this time around? Has it changed? And that is something that is evergreen now. It will go on forever and ever. It gets updated, but it's something that people do respond to and they need to know about.
That's fantastic. Good for you. That's fantastic. I'm so proud to hear, you just really take the proverbial bull by the horns there and just really go for it. And I just really love that content idea. That's just, that's excellent. I love that brand extension for your brand too.
Well, Ryan, and the other thing is, it's sort of like, not to put it in crass business terms, but it was a need. It was a hole that needed filling. What we found in our 11 years here is that there is a real need for talk about food. There's plenty of, magazines and publications that might review restaurants, which we really actually don't do. We talk about the restaurants, but we don't really review them. But it hasn't been anything, that sort of brings all that together in one space where people can find that. And for other issues, again, down here in South Florida, for growing your own food and supporting local businesses. Now, this was another thing that came out of the pandemic. We all in edible communities talk about supporting local businesses and knowing what we grow here. In South Florida, I can tell you after 11 years of, preaching this in every single issue, it wasn't until the pandemic that many people said, I don't know if I trust this, where did these tomatoes come from? Now I don't know. Now, that really didn't have anything to do with it, but if it got their attention, here we are ready to sit there and say, well, here's your farmer, and here's a produce box that you can get, or here's a drive-through where you can meet your farmer right there. It's grown there. And it took a pandemic to get the attention on the part of a lot of people, and it stuck. It's stuck. Now we have a whole bunch of people who understand why it's important to support their local farmer.
No, that's great. That's excellent. It's a good segue as you talk about updating the website and where people can find the information. If you would, could you share a little bit? I know a lot of folks would know Edible for the print publication. What are you doing on the digital side from an advertising perspective and content perspective?
Well, our website contains our digital edition. You can always access. We're a free ad-supported publication. People can subscribe to us if they don't want to track it down, but our model is, like all the other edibles, is sort of interesting in that advertisers are the primary sources where people get their magazines. So we have a market grocery store chain right here where people can get them, plus farmers market, plus many others locations there. But if people don't want to track it down, they even choose to subscribe to a free publication, and that lives online also. Our stories live online, but more than ever, there's way more information and news than can ever fit in the publication. So the publication is great for our images and our long form stuff, and as a source of information. We want people to hold on to our print magazine, and they do. And they save every copy of it, which I find great. But online is so much more. Or if I have to cut a story for space and I'm like, okay, I can drive people online or there's more, or here are the recipes. So the website has all of that information, and there's now so much stuff on the website that's really timely that will just never fit into an edition that people need to know about. So people go there, and then we drive people to the website through our social media and through drivers in the magazine. And we're resurrecting QR codes because that was another thing that came out of the
Isn't
pandemic.
that true? It's so true.
Right.
The QR code piece. What's interesting to me is now, I mean, QR codes, everyone thought, oh, that's a thing of the past.
Right.
They really didn't get adopted. People
Right.
weren't really grasping them. And now all throughout, now menus, everything's driven off QR codes. It's interesting. So what's been the response to kind of getting back to the QR code thing?
I tried to put some thought behind it. I said, where does it make sense for people to use a QR code? So I'm like, okay,
right.
Some of our book, okay, we list farmers markets where they are. And there's a lot of them, year round. We have farmers markets all year round, even in our slow season right now. Okay. There's still over like 50 markets in South Florida. So I'm like, okay, a QR code that links to our page that lists all of our, all the farmers markets there and their individual listings. So now you can go there and you're going to use it on your mobile device. Okay. So, and you're going to want to save it on your mobile device. So what we do is we put QR codes in for anything that's really links to a page that lists things that you may want to refer to again and again. So I think we had probably I had 5 QR codes in the current edition that did all that. Another one was a place where you can buy tropical fruit trees. Well, this is going to grow and grow and grow. So I'm like, okay, that's something you always want, fruit stands.
Right.
And that's how we chose to do it. So I'm not going to link to a story where there's more to the story unless I saw the need to do it. Right now, I don't. But if it's something that you can hold on your phone and bookmark on your phone and say, I'm not going to carry the magazine around with me when I'm going to go to the farmer's market, but I do need this information on the phone because, hey, it's Saturday and is so-and-so open today? Let me see. That to me seems a practical use for it.
It does. It makes sense. Now, one of the things I've observed, not with a lot of publishers, so maybe that's one of the reasons it's good that we're talking about this, is using QR codes. And for example, in the gutter rail of an ad, for example, of a advertiser, so that we can do jump tracking. So jump tracking is, putting a QR code on the bottom, it's probably the gutter side of an ad. Someone can then scan it to go to that advertiser's website, et cetera. So we can track that jump from the ad over to their website or over to other information that's online. So that is beginning to grow in popularity. And then to your point, which is excellent, if you've got additional photos, additional content, hey, just scan this QR code, which gives us another jumpable tracking point to be able to go for more. So I'm really glad to hear you say, to saying that. Now, are you seeing in the food space, in the food industry where you operate, that are people getting sort of tired of social media and are turning to more traditional sources like you, or is it a balance, or is it lopsided, or what's kind of your thought on that?
I don't know. I'm a big believer in social media as a driver.
Sure.
As a driver, but it's also an opportunity for us to be a little more playful with our approach. I mean, we like to think that we've cultivated a voice and we want to be that trusted voice of food and farm, but our social media, we can have a sense of humor with it. We can share and we can still try to be genuinely useful, but it's, I have my own, I think Instagram is probably the most important right now. We have a TikTok account. We haven't done anything with it because again, I don't have a lot of people. In a perfect world, I'd have somebody, I'd say, yeah, go for it. But Instagram is real important. I'm personally a Twitter fan. And even though our numbers of followers of Twitter are flatlined, they're super engaged. It's a news feed for a lot of people. And so we aim to be that news feed for people who follow us. And those people who are on Twitter are real devoted. And I follow it. I love Twitter. And then Facebook is interesting because it's a different demographic. It's very, for us, it's like almost all women, certain age groups, sweet spot for advertisers, very engaging. They pay attention to it. And really and truly, they are all different. Each one meets different audiences. And although we duplicate some of our efforts and do our promotions, and we do have paid promotions on social media, it also allows us to maintain our editorial integrity because our publication is not pay to play in any way. and will not be that. The day that now do we have branded and sponsored content? Sure, and a lot more of that. But we really are really firm about that. But social media to me is a grayer area and allows us to kind of be a little more, I don't know, sherry with stuff. It doesn't look like a promotion, and it really is a promotion for somebody, but it's not something I wouldn't do anyway.
Right.
And I can get away with it like that. And it gets people's attention too, advertisers' attention too. And this is why, when I hear other publishers say, well, we don't have time for social media. I'm like, well, you make the time, because this is how your advertisers, by tagging them in social media, they know you're paying attention to them. And by the way, I see very few publications really exploit that.
Right.
And
Agreed.
I don't understand that. It really doesn't take time to throw something back to them, and they see it and they feel like you're taking care of them, and you are taking care of them.
Indeed. Yeah. And with tools like Hootsuite and Falcon and so many others that are out there, the ability for you to load that stuff in advance. I think some of it, Gretchen, might be a little bit of training on the editorial team's part, just to kind of really understand what that's all about. But now that would lead me, though, to a question about, let's turn our last couple minutes towards, employees and staffing and things like that. When you think about, building a team, and as people look to build teams or grow teams or change teams, what are some of the qualities that you look for in good employees, and maybe where do you find those good employees?
Well, the quality question is pretty easy. I look for honesty. Honestly, I look for people who will deliver honesty in everything. Like, tell me the truth. Can you get this to me on time? If you can't, do what we ask you to do, and do it with integrity. And I would rather have somebody like that than the most gifted writer in the world who blows off a deadline.
Right.
So, now finding people, we use freelance. We work remotely. We're a real lean team here. And I have a good stable of freelancers editorially. But my biggest problem is finding people, as everybody has this problem. But even before the pandemic, we just can't find people for advertising sales. We just can't find them. And I don't know what else to do. I mean,
I tell people all the time, one of the things that I like to do is grow them. Is to try to find good conversationalists that are either young or old or in between, people that can carry on a great conversation. And then I can usually train a good conversationalist to sell media. What's hard is just finding good humans sometimes. Like you said, good, honest humans that want to put in a hard day's work, because media sales, I mean, it's not a 9-to-5 job. If it was, I think a lot more people would be doing it. Do you find good employees through referrals? Because I don't get much luck putting ads online. Have you had luck with ads online, or is it mostly referrals through friends? Where have you kind of found some folks?
It's referrals. It's listening and paying attention. It's also sort of looking at people over the years, since we have a lot of years doing this, and just sort of having like a mental list of people, like, maybe one day they've got all the skill set I need, but they're doing something else right now. But, I'll continue to cultivate this relationship, and perhaps something will come out of it. But that said, it's harder than ever right now. And ironically, the opportunities are there. This is it. It's like, I have never felt so optimistic about this, and things have been paying off. I mean, businesses are ready to come back, for all the reasons we talked about earlier. I think this is the time when, we're really looking forward to the year ahead here. I mean, things are really looking good. I mean, we're in a great position here. Now I need some help with that.
Yeah, no, agreed. I also find that sometimes publishers wait until they have a need to begin interviewing folks. And I encourage publishers not to do that. Instead, if you already have a sales team, never stop taking resumes and lunches and interviewing people that are in the sales business. To your point, you never know when an opportunity may arise. I'll just say to them, hey, I don't have anything right now, but I'd love to meet with you for lunch. So if something comes up, maybe it would be of interest to you. Very rarely does somebody turn me down for that. The other thing that's a little secret for everybody is, if you continuously are interviewing salespeople and others for the team, your current sales team usually will realize that and go, wow, I guess I better do a great job, because there's others out there that are looking.
Right. That's a good point.
Now, let's just, as we come to the end of our conversation, which has just been great, if you could think of sort of one cost-saving tip that you've done over the years, or you might be doing going forward that other publishers might benefit from, what would maybe that one tip kind of be?
This is a tough one. This is a tough one here. I don't know if this is cost savings, but it's sort of cost leveraging. And I'm sure many other publishers are in the same boat here. We're trying to do a whole lot of stuff with not a lot of people, and people have different talents. One of the things we employ freelancers, writers, and illustrators and photographers. We love our illustrated covers. We just won awards last week in the state for our covers. We're really proud of that. And we love giving opportunities for up and coming illustrators and other writers. But really, I'm thinking of the artists here, and we don't offer much for our covers. However, we can turn around when we do a custom publishing project and use them. And then, because the client is going to absorb the cost, really like triple or whatever we paid them to do a cover for us. We're like, yes, but believe in us, because if you do your job well, and we would use you. And that idea of really using, I think, is a real efficient way. It allows us to work more cost efficiently because our editorial costs are what they are. We'd love them to be a lot more, but frankly, believe me, do not misunderstand. Our writers and our artists are worth every penny, and we would pay them a lot more if we could, and we will when we can. But this is a way to get them more work, and then sustaining work for them, because then their work gets out there. And we have found this approach to work time and time again. So in the big scheme of things, having paying your editorial modestly, what you can afford to pay, but then really referring them or making them part of your package. Remember I said that custom publishing approach? We go back and then we use our illustrators and we say, hey, we've got it. And then we put as high a price tag as we can humanly put on it. And that works out. And so it really is sort of a cost savings for us, because we get the best of both worlds there.
No, it makes perfect sense. I think it's a great advice, and what a great conversation, friends, on behalf of our friends at Sheridan Printing as our Publisher Success series. What a great conversation with Gretchen Schmidt from Edible, South Florida. So Gretchen, best of luck as we roll, hopefully, fingers crossed, go on the other side of this pandemic and get into 2022 and see some real good things out there on the horizon for the media business. So thank you so much, and enjoy the air conditioning down there in South Florida. That's for sure.
Great talking with you, Ryan.
This Publishing Excellence interview series has been brought to you by your friends at Sheridan.